Hey everyone, Kyle Walker here. If you love cars, fixing things, or just want to understand your vehicle better, you're in the right place. I share hands-on tips, smart driving advice, and straight-up car talk without the fluff. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stick around till the end. You don't want to miss what's coming up. Let's get into it.
Every car owner strives to maintain the car in optimal technical condition. And the more modern the car is, the more difficult it is to maintain it with your own hands. But many people continue to actively drive cars, under the hood of which there is a carburetor engine. And to the number of popular carburetor systems can be safely attributed K126G. Moreover, K126 has many modifications, and each of them is installed on certain vehicles. In this case, we are talking about UAZ cars. Features of the device. The carburetor of the model under consideration has a fairly simple adjustment, as well as the possibility of self-adjustment. Not in vain, K126G actively began to put on cars from the UAZ family. In total, they can stand 3 types of carburetors. 151, DAZ Solex, K126G. And the last variant is most often found on cars of this brand. K126G is included in the basic configuration of UAZ Bucanca. It is also actively put on the UAZ Hunter, as well as the UAZ Patriot. This carburetor is ideal for 2 UAZ motors. These are UMZ 4-17819 and UMZ 4-2-1810. Structurally, the carburetor under consideration consists of gas pedal pump, device for dosing hot in the first chamber, dosing device. In the second chamber, economizer, air damper, idling mechanism. There are also a number of additional and minor elements in the device, but each of them is aimed at maintaining and improving the operation of the entire system. How it works. In the case of the carburetor K126G, 2 chambers are provided at once, where the processes of mixing the working fuel-air mixture take place. These are certain proportions of fuel and oxygen. When the key is turned in the ignition switch, fuel begins to flow into the first of the chambers. Then, as the torque increases, it is formed in the second chamber as well. The structural elements of the carburetor system allow a strictly dosed amount of fuel and air to pass into the chambers. This makes it possible to form a mixture with optimal proportions. If the engine, which operates under high load and at high speeds, needs an enriched mixture, then the economizer speaks its word. The solenoid valve increases the air flow through the permanently open air damper. This enriches the mixture. How the adjustment is carried out. Now you can move on to the question of adjusting the carburetor type, K126G. The task is not the most difficult, especially for those who have already dealt with other carburetors. Before you adjust by your own efforts this carburetor series, K126 with the marking G, you need to know why it is done at all. Adjustment is used in situations where it is necessary to eliminate the resulting failure in the operation of the system. Also, the event is carried out in order to increase the productivity of the device. Self-adjustment of the studied carburetor K126G can be carried out on different parameters, including fuel consumption, stabilize. The work of the gas pedal pump, set the minimum parameters for idling, to control the quality of connections in the carburetor assembly. Reduce fuel consumption depending on the operating mode. Raise or lower the maintained constant fuel level inside the flow chamber. Check the efficiency and effectiveness of operation when the economizer is activated. Adjust the flow capacity on the jet side. It is important to note that the adjustment of any of these parameters is always carried out only when the engine is switched off. Depending on the situation, it may be necessary to wait for the engine to cool down completely. In other cases, on the contrary, work on a warmed engine and check the correctness of the settings. Most often it is necessary to adjust the flow rate of the mixture consisting of fuel and air. One of the key advantages of the K126G carburetor is that it is not necessary to disassemble the entire structure for adjustment. All necessary measures can be performed by simply lifting the hood. Adjusting the flow rate, since it is mainly required in the case of the K126G to adjust the fuel consumption, it will be logical to start studying the carburetor and its settings from this point. There are 2 small screws on the body of the device. Each of these screws is responsible for controlling the supply of the mixture to the engine cylinders. and these are the quality screws. If you look at the side near the throttle actuator, there is another screw. This is the quantity screw. Its main task is to provide the necessary volume of fuel that enters the engine for subsequent mixing and combustion. Read also, device and adjustment of popular carburetors Solex 21083 if you need to adjust the fuel flow rate, and in front of you is a carburetor model K126G, then it will be necessary to perform the following manipulations. Shut down the engine and wait for it to cool down completely. You need to work with a cold engine. When it cools down, you should tighten the quality screws. Do this up to the stop. Now each of the screws should be unscrewed. Exactly 3 turns. Start the engine and wait for the internal combustion engine to reach its normal operating temperature. With the help of the quantity screw, you need to set the engine speed at about 600 revolutions per minute. This is done by gradually tightening the adjusting screw. Now tighten the quality screw on the side of the first chamber. Do this until there are clear signs of unstable operation of the power plant. That is, there will be a shortage of fuel. After waiting for the first malfunction, turn the quality screw back literally 1/8 of a full turn. At the same time, make sure that the engine functions smoothly. The same adjustment should be performed using the quality screw, but already from the second chamber. Then, taking the quantity screw, set the normal idle speed. This is about 900-1000 revolutions per minute. As you can see, setting the carburetor in terms of normalization of fuel consumption on the model K126G is nothing complicated. But it is important for the driver to understand what and why he does at each of the stages. Only in this case, the adjustment will provide the desired result. What indicates malfunctions? The carburetor of the model under consideration, K126G, has its own malfunctions that are characteristic of this device. Basically, all of them have to do with a reduction in the flow capacity of the journals, the exhaustion of the pump resource, as well as the clearances in the throttle plates. Therefore, periodically car owners are faced with unbalanced idle operation. As a result, the engine floods, or it feels an acute shortage of fuel. The mixture turns out to be depleted. There are several signs that indicate that the carburetor needs repair or adjustment. The amount of fuel consumed increases dramatically. At high revolutions, the car moves jerkily. The engine does not start the first time, hesitates, and is unstable. The engine makes a noise uncharacteristic of a normally tuned engine when driving. Vibrations are felt during travel that have never been felt before. When braking, or at a sharp gain in speed, thick black smoke actively comes out of the exhaust pipe. In the work of any carburetor, including K126G, a huge role is played by the installed jets. In fact, these are plugs, which have several holes of a specific diameter. Due to these holes, air or fuel passes through. This allows the fuel-air mixture to be formed in time. But when pouring low-quality fuel, the plugs begin to get dirty. Due to the clogging, the engine does not get the required amount of fuel. Therefore, one of the tasks is to clean these very jets. The advantage of the system is that it is not necessary to disassemble the unit. Each of the jets can be individually removed from the housing without complicated disassembly work. Disassembly. Alas, it is not always possible to adjust the carburetor system by turning the screws alone. In some cases, when the carburetor is heavily contaminated, it will have to be disassembled and then cleaned and tuned. In general, it is not so difficult to remove K126G from the car. It is enough to disconnect all connectors, hoses, and trunk lines, unscrew the nuts, and remove the assembly from the studs, seizing, and gasket. It is much more difficult to disassemble the carburetor into individual components, its components. The main task, because of which the disassembly is carried out, is the washing of all internal cavities. Often because of their contamination, it is not possible to adjust the system in the usual way and return the carburetor to stable operation. Such measures relate to adjustment and are not repair work. Proceed to disassembly only if the body and external elements have been thoroughly cleaned of contaminants beforehand. In this situation, a carburetor cleaner will be an excellent assistant. K126G is disassembled according to the following algorithm. First, it is necessary to unbolt the fasteners of the linkage of the existing lever. Then it is necessary to remove the end of the rod responsible for low revolutions from the appeared hole. Also unscrew 7 small screws, with the help of which the cover is kept from the float chamber. The cover is carefully lifted and then removed. There will be a gasket under the cover, and it is important not to damage it in the process of dismantling. The float axle and the float itself can now be removed from the chamber cavity. By grasping the spring, the needle from the fuel valve is removed in parallel. To remove the air damper, it is necessary to unscrew a couple of fastening screws. Then the screw fixing the drive arm bushing is unscrewed. The damper should be pulled out without separating it from the lever and return spring. It is also necessary to unscrew the filter plug and take out the screen. At the next stage, the float chamber is disassembled. All components should be carefully separated from each other and pulled out in a strictly vertical position. From the outside of the carburetor body, the plugs are turned off to get to the jets in the first and second chambers. This will now allow the jets themselves and the economizer valve to be removed. Only the diffuser with the mixing section remains inside the carburetor. Touching the small diffusers is categorically not allowed because it will not be possible to return them to their place independently. Read also what functions performs the solenoid idle valve, how it works, and its characteristic faults. This is the end of the disassembly. Cleaning procedure. Since the adjustment with the quality and quantity screws was ineffective due to contamination of the carburetor, it had to be disassembled and then cleaned. Mostly soot and impurities are formed in the jets, air flaps, and in the float chamber tank. Each of the above-mentioned elements should be washed, cleaned, and blown out after removal. There is a special approach to the jets. If even slightly change the surface or damage the elements, the engine will not work stably. The surface of the plugs categorically cannot be washed. For cleaning, copper wires and toothpicks should be used. Try to clean so as to minimally touch the metal surface. Having finished cleaning, blow out the plugs with compressed air. You can take an ordinary canister or a compressor. Such a delicate attitude is not required for the air damper. It is usually placed with other metal elements in a container, pour solvent, and soak for 2 to 3 hours. Then it is important to thoroughly dry and blow everything out. The float chamber can be cleaned from all contaminants quite quickly. To do this, a carburetor cleaner is poured inside. Let it insist and perform its functions. Usually 1.5 to 2 hours is enough. Then take a lint-free rag and wipe all the cavities. It will not be superfluous to blow the assembly with compressed air. Now the entire system is assembled in reverse order. The gasket may need to be replaced. After reassembly, a test run of the engine is made. There is a high probability that the carburetor will not work perfectly after disassembly and reassembly. Therefore, adjustments will need to be made using the quality and quantity screws. Useful tips. Engaged in the maintenance of the carburetor type K126G, the driver can independently perform all the necessary activities. To make it easier to carry out tuning and adjustment, start from the optimal parameters that are relevant for this model of carburetor. The liquid level in the float chamber should be located in the range from 18.5 to 21.5 millimeters lower than the upper limit. If the level appears to be higher than recommended, then you can bend the bracket on the float a little. The gap between the air flaps and the housing should not be more than 0.2 millimeters. If it is larger, then normal operation will be forgotten. It is necessary to adjust and restore the required gap. After assembling all components, make sure that no fuel leaks from any connectors or connections. Otherwise, this indicates incorrect assembly or wear or breakage of individual components. The minimum permitted engine speed when the engine is idling is 400 revolutions per minute. There should be no jerk or dip when the engine changes from one mode to another. Otherwise, it is necessary to perform adjustment again. Almost everyone can cope with the settings of the carburetor type K126G. This model has a simple and understandable design. The manufacturer has provided everything so that the driver could independently service and adjust the unit if necessary. Have you ever encountered a carburetor K126G? What car was it installed on? What can you say about the complexity of its adjustment, disassembly, or maintenance? What strengths and weaknesses can you note? We are waiting for your answers. Subscribe, leave a comment, and tell your friends about us. In conclusion, The K126G carburetor exemplifies a sophisticated blend of engineering and functionality. Its design allows for precise fuel-air mixture adjustments, ensuring optimal engine performance. The self-adjustment feature enhances reliability and efficiency, adapting to varying conditions without manual intervention. Understanding the principles of operation behind the K126G not only highlights its importance in modern engines, but also emphasizes the advancements in carburetor technology. Thank you for watching, and we hope this exploration has deepened your appreciation for this essential component.